So, all right, we are recording, my friends. So, hey, Clint, you and I know that we've been kind of planning this for the last week just to have this chat. And there's not a lot of format here, but I want to introduce you to a lot of people. And so, could you tell me and tell us a little bit about Level and really about you as well? What's Level about, and what's your background that helps you run Level? So,
yeah, appreciate that. I've been working in real estate now for 5 or 6 years. I used to work with one of the top real estate teams in all the nation, worldwide actually, and realized that I have a huge passion for operations, system, admin, and just leverage in general. So when I left that company, I actually left to start consulting and working with different teams in real estate and talk to them about what we can do to kind of streamline their processes, systems, and everything. The biggest need I found amongst every single person I spoke with, whether they be operations, sales, admin, or whoever, was that everybody needs help and everybody needs leverage. And myself, I've been working with virtual assistants now for over 5 years, and I've worked with hundreds of them. And I know that they are such an affordable way to get leverage in your business when you can't hire somebody in-house. So I realized that there's a huge gap in our industry for people that want to hire somebody, but just don't know that they have options.
Sure.
And with people that hear the words virtual assistant and don't think of that as a hire, as a person, but more of a, hey, I can just pass things off. So Level exists now to help create those essentially long distance relationships where we're helping people that are looking for those jobs and they are talent get paired up with the right people that are also needing talent earlier in the business than they think they can afford.
So I think you and I think both you and I have a huge passion to dig in pretty deep on this topic and to talk about the real people and the real relationships and stuff like that. So before we get into that, just to kind of fine tune what you just shared with us, would you say that for the average person, just kind of from an understanding point of view, so are you a broker basically between the VAs and those that are doing the hiring, or are you a recruiter? Are you a trainer? Where do you fit into the relationship between the person that needs that leverage and the leverage that exists out there?
Yeah, we're kind of a blend of all of that. So not only are we recruiters, so we do recruit, we do get exactly the person that you're looking for and help facilitate that. But we don't just leave at that point. We're here to foster relationships and partner with people that are looking to have a person in their organization that's going to make a profound and lasting impact. And so we're here to help facilitate that relationship however we can. We don't leave once that relationship starts. We actually are here. And it's because so many people don't have the experience and don't have the knowledge on how to work with somebody remotely. That's where we come in. We help really facilitate and build that relationship with everybody.
Okay, awesome. Love that description. So let's dig in, because you and I have had some fun conversations this last week, and you know pretty deeply now just in the last week what my feeling is on these relationships. And those that haven't seen it, we did just recently do an interview where, nothing against Clint and I, we love talking about this stuff, and we love talking about, I could talk VAs, for 3 hours straight here, but we don't really see an opportunity that there's interviews like this that are done and they actually interview the actual VAs. And that's what we did this week. And I love that opportunity was there. And I love that she was willing to do it. And her name is Rain, and she's one of my favorite VAs I've worked with in the last couple of years. So if you haven't seen that, reach out to us. We'll send you the link if you can't find it. It's in a couple different locations. But I would like to get kind of your perspective, Clint, is because you had even mentioned, I don't really see anybody interviewing the actual VAs on this kind of type of format. What was your input on to what she had to share with us? Because I think seeing their perspective is just huge.
David, you're right. I mean, honestly, that was the first time I've ever heard. When you told me that you were thinking about doing that, I was all about it. I was like, why hasn't anybody done this before? Why didn't I think of that? Your interview with Rain just showed me the relationship you two had and still have, even to this day, that she trusts you, she loves you, you guys are a partnership. It's not, you were never a person that was just delegating things off and hoping she would do it and get back to you. you had a legitimate interest in her growth, her development, and she had that same thing in you. I love when you told me or mentioned in the interview that she knows you, your wife, your dog. She knows everything. She knows that. And you know the exact same about her. And it's because of that relationship. One of the biggest things that stuck out of me in that interview, and anybody watching this, if you haven't seen that interview, please go watch it because it's so profound to get the other side of things, is that she mentioned that 1 or 2 out of 10 clients that she's had, or anybody that she knows that have had a client while working as a VA, 1 or 2 out of 10 people actually create that relationship and make them a part of the team and make them a team member.
Yeah.
So that means that 8 or 9 out of 10 people are literally just saying, here's some work for you to go do for the day. Give it back to me when you're done. And it baffles me that people out there try to make that work, because I couldn't imagine having somebody in my office where I could just literally say, hey, here's your work for the today. And then when you're done, come back to me. I'll give you more work. How does that relationship work in an office?
Yeah. And that is, so here's something I want to point out. I love that you just brought that up, because I think there's another point I want to make on that exact same point of the conversation. She did say this though, about those other 8 that hadn't developed, legitimate relationships with her and weren't looking at her as just a task doer. They were looking at her as a full human, and she has dreams, she has goals, she has career aspirations, and they wanted to be a part of that and help make things happen for her. What she did say about those other 8, though, I found awesome. She says the other ones, they were actually good people. They were legitimately good, nice people, good bosses, but how they handled the relationship was they were hiring her to just do tasks, and they would give her tasks in the morning. She would get those done. And I've talked to her more in depth about this. She didn't go in depth on the conversation about this, but basically a lot of VAs, it's like, here's your task for the day. Give me a report at the end of the day. Show me a report of everything that you did. And that is the extent of our relationship. I'll give you a task list in the morning. You give me a report at the end of the day. And that is our relationship. So she didn't say that they were bad people, but she never felt like she was an actual part of the team. She just got task lists every single day. Now, who would we do that with, that we hire and they work at the desk next to us? I don't even understand why we treat that different.
Couldn't imagine. I'm in the mind that relationships are everywhere. Literally everybody you interact with, especially in real estate, you make a relationship with. I mean, could you imagine not having a relationship with your mortgage lender? Somebody you want to have on the phones and call and know that they're going to do a good job for your clients and that you can reach them whenever you need them and they're going to help. If you didn't have a relationship, if you just thought them as, hey, they're going to be the paperwork guys that get us the money, it wouldn't work out.
And I spent years being a transaction coordinator, and I've got a relationship directly with my agents, and it's a real relationship. And then on the opposite side, I, as a transaction coordinator, had real relationships with the people that worked in the office with me. And I had real relationships with the vendors that I worked with, which were the title and the mortgage and everything else. And then we're all leveraged for each other. And then we hire leverage. And that's what you were talking about earlier. We are looking for leverage, and this is a reasonable option for leverage. But then we look at that leverage completely different when we think of it from a VA perspective. And I'm not saying we all do that, but the fact that she used the example of 10 clients and maybe 2 of them, me being one of them, that means only one other person in that group actually treated her and acknowledged her dreams, her goals, and were looking at her as real talent. That's crazy to me.
It's crazy because people think, they hear the word virtual assistant. If you tell somebody virtual assistant, you mention that word, and you tell a group of people that, and they're all going to have different opinions of what that means, because they all have different experiences or heard different things or done different projects with a virtual assistant.
Yeah.
Virtual assistant isn't a title. It's a person.
Yeah.
And ultimately somebody's like, oh, I've tried using a VA. It didn't work for my business. That's like saying, yeah, I hired a buyer's agent and it didn't work, so I'm going to stop hiring buyer's agents on my team.
Yeah.
You hired a person and that person didn't work, but don't give it up because you found the wrong fit.
Okay, so I want to ask you this question because you and I have discussed this a little bit, but I kind of gave you my perspective, and I haven't really heard your side of this. So I'd love to hear a bit more about this. Is my perspective is that if we're going to hire someone, we have a responsibility as leaders, okay? And as leaders, we're not here to just direct people and everything else like that. I have, in my opinion anyways, I have a different level of responsibility to care. Okay, that's just my perspective on leadership. Okay, so part of my perspective on leadership is that if I'm going to invest, the best way to invest in my business is not just to invest in the infrastructure of my business, it's to invest in the people. And if there's anything that we can do to help them on a personal development, a professional development, look at other opportunities that could be available to them, all of those things are huge to me as a leader. I want to look for opportunities. And if that's an opportunity that they have a skill set for, they have real talent, I want to make that available to them. Okay. Yeah. And that they're real talent. So here's my question for you is I had let you know that I literally look at that when I'm hiring a VA is I talk to her and say, I think you're real talent. I'm hiring you as real talent, just like I would someone locally here, which means, okay, right now you're doing TC work, but I'm going to need leverage on the hiring side. Does she have an opportunity to learn, grow, and learn that skill? Because it is a skill set to hire people. Then the skill set to go ahead and manage other VAs. And man, I can go on and on and on with this, but I'm actually looking for a career path even for the VA, not just the local person that's sitting next to me. I don't see any difference between the two. And with you helping others to hire VAs, I'm not saying it's the same thought process. I'm asking, what is your thought process on that? And what is the thought process with some of your clients?
I agree with you. And I'd say that when you're looking to hire somebody, you're looking to fill a role. Okay. You don't think I have a bunch of tasks I need somebody to do. You think I have a role in my organization that needs filled. A virtual assistant, especially, one of ours, like in the Philippines, are an affordable option to have that role start on your team sooner. They pay for themselves sooner, but it's still having that role. So yeah, when you hire for a role, you're hiring somebody that's talent. You're looking for that growth opportunity. When you start chatting with a virtual assistant in the Philippines, what you're going to notice is they want that. They really do. And they might not be the person that's going to bring it up to you on the first few calls until you have an open and honest relationship with them. Until they know who you are, and that they can trust you and that you can trust them, they might not bring that type of stuff up to you. But it would go the same for me. If I didn't know you, I wouldn't know if you had my best interest or not. I would just know that you're looking to hire, so I might be a little shied away from that. So yeah, when you're looking for hiring a role, look for that role and then look at that person and go, how can this person fit in my organization? Because you right now are hiring for a role and you're growing. You're hiring for a role for a multitude of reasons. Whether you want to gain your time back, you want to grow your business, you want somebody to plug into your systems and have that option for when you go on out of town or into a meeting or somebody else, that somebody else can pick up that system where you're at. And having a person that can fit in that role and can fit into a future role is important to know. And I think a lot of people get into hiring a VA not first in that mentality, but having that mentality of, oh, I've got so much stuff on my plate I can unload, without going, are those one-time things or is that a role?
Okay, so you mentioned two words that I just happen to like. You mentioned how that person, I say she because I'm thinking of Rain off the top of my head, might be the VA that we were just talking about, but it could be a he or she. So you said, number one, does this person fit into the role? So it's not, can they accomplish just these tasks? Can they fit into a role? Second of all, which is a more human question in my opinion, but the second thing is, and this is the one that I love, you said, can this person fit into my organization? Okay. So the other phrase that I would use is also, do they fit into our culture?
100%. 100%. There's When we're recruiting, so David, if you were to tell me right now, hey, I'm looking to fill this role, I'm looking for this, here are the systems we use, here's the schedule we're trying to fit, I can gather the type of person that you're looking for and help find that talented person. At the end of the day, I don't know enough about you and your culture, and I won't ever. Without being in your world and in your culture on a daily basis, I will never understand your culture as much as you will. So you can tell me everything you need to tell me to find the right fit and the right talent for your organization. But at the end of the day, I still need you to interview somebody for a cultural fit.
Yep. Okay. So organization and cultural fit, I mean, just use once again, and I'll keep using her throughout this interview just so we're consistent, because we've both worked with a lot of different VAs, but now you have actually, I've never met any of your VAs, and the closest you've ever come to meeting mine was that interview with Rain. So we at least have that in common as Rain. So I'll use her as an example. So when I was interviewing her, I was specifically interviewing her to see if not only was she real talent, because I had a couple candidates that I thought were real talents, and not only could she accomplish the task, she didn't know it at the time that she was interviewing with me, but I personally was looking, is she going to be a good long-term fit for my team and my culture of people here? I want my people to love her. I want my people to see her as no different than anybody else on the team. And when they are, just the fact that we went ahead, and I'm going to use one example. So this is just one of those small little things that you can do that bring her personal pride. So we ended up sending out a pre-listing packet. We're in real estate, so we send out a pre-listing packet to our potential clients that are going to list a home. And it says not only who is your agent, and here's a picture of your agent, but here's the team that backs this agent up. Here's the listing agent's picture. Here's the transaction coordinator's picture. Here's the ops manager's picture. And here is our transaction coordinator. And it's got a picture of Rain right in there. I think she actually had a few little tears when she first saw that. And she goes, I can't believe you actually have my picture and my name in the literature that goes out to your customers. She is a part of our team and a part of our culture and a part of our organization. And we treat it like that, and we treat her like that. And that doesn't mean that the other 8 people that didn't do that for her were bad people, but they could have gotten a lot more out of her. All eight of them could have gotten more out of her. She had more to give.
Having somebody in any of your materials, when you show your team and you're showing your team to people, these are members of your team. One of my favorite things, David, you and I are part of a TC organization now, and I love seeing my fellow TCs where they actually are listed on the website of their agent as this is the TC, this is our transaction coordinator.
Yeah.
And yeah, they perhaps have their own business or work for another business, but they are still part of that team in that team's eyes. And to me, having that relationship and knowing that they're part of the team, it just does wonders. And it looks so good to your clients. It really does.
Yeah. So I'm enjoying this conversation just because I don't think it happens enough. I think both you and I, we could talk about this for a couple hours and we're both preaching to the choir. But with that said, I still think it's a valuable conversation to have, because I think there are potentially people out there that are just considering adding VAs to their culture, to their business, to their organization. And quite frankly, they may not have thought of this perspective as not only am I hiring real talent, but they hadn't even thought about looking at them as a point of view that they're a part of that organization rather than just hiring a task doer. So I think this is an important conversation from that standpoint. The other thing is helping people to think bigger. This isn't just your hiring leverage for a task doer. Do you have potential opportunity and growth in the future? Now look at this person a little differently. Could that person possibly have greater potential than just these tasks that you are needing done right now? Make a long-term hire.
David, when I first started working with virtual assistants 5 or 6 years ago, I had 2 different ones. One was on the admin and TC side, and one was on an operational side of the business. After 2 to 3 years, between 2 to 3 years, those people were both managers of a department. The admin person had 5 other VAs under her. and the operations person had 3 other people under her. So now it was a 10-person organization that 2 people were running. And now me, I still had 2 points of contact. Everything got done through my 2 points of contact, and they had their own team. It was an opportunity for them that didn't even exist when we first started getting in business together, but they were they're such great talent that we wanted to help develop and grow them. So when you start having that relationship and realizing, you start chatting with them and saying, what are you interested in? What do you like doing? What is your favorite part about this job? What's your least favorite part about this job? What do you just hate completely? And found out that one of them was like, I've actually had a ton of management experience in previous roles. And we were like, tell me about that. Let's hear about what you've previously done. And they're like, yeah, well, I used to do this and I want to get back into it. We can do that.
So I want to ask you to go into a couple different areas, but I thought what might be valuable as well here, because you know me well enough now to know that I like to talk about real talent. Is I'm still looking for real talent. I don't care if it's VA or local. And I like to share the story of how I knew she was real talent. Okay. And how the day I figured out that she was real talent was after I had trained her in for 6 weeks and poured everything I had into her and gave her the best that I've got. She asked me after 6 weeks, she said, do you mind if I start taking notes? And that was an example of a communication problem, because that crushed my ever living soul, because I had given her everything I had got. We had been on Skype for 8 hours a day for 6 weeks. And I gave her everything that I had. And after 6 weeks, she asked if she can start taking notes on everything that I say. And it crushed my soul, because I thought, what have you been doing? What have you been doing for 6 weeks? Have you not already been taking notes? And where the communication problem came in, she was asking me something different. It was somewhere between 7 and 10 days later, which she produced for me as something I had been trying to put together for a couple years, which was she actually produced for me about a 32 or 34 page operations manual of everything I do, everything I say, screenshots of everything I do with bubbles, arrows, notes, and everything. She put together a complete operations manual for every aspect of my job, which I wanted to do for a couple years, but I was busy and I needed leverage and I couldn't get away from what I was doing to step aside and do that. And she knocked it out in less than a week, week and a half. So when she said, can I start taking notes? That was her translation, basically saying, can I take these notes and format it into a way that is usable for our organization? That right there, as soon as she produced that to me and gave me 30 some pages of my life in writing, what I do day to day, that's talent. That's real talent.
Real talent, regardless if it's virtual or not, that's real talent. And I love that you poured so much into her for so long. You just kept pouring into her, and she came back. You knew she was good. You knew she was good. You wouldn't have hired her if you didn't know she was good. But it took you 6 weeks and a slight communication problem to realize how great of talent she is. And I bet you that one thing right there on your last interview with her is what's causing most people to reach out to you probably right now to say, hey, where do I find a rain, or can I have rain?
Yeah. And I do get a lot of people say, well, if I only had a rain like you do. So I will say this, because I love that you just said that, because I do get that. I get that. I get that from people I work with in the office, and they'll go, well, if I had a rain. And the difference is I don't know that there aren't other rains out there, because to me, what a rain is a real talent. Okay. And there is real talent out there. So it comes down to, and this is part of where I wanted to go with you, so thank you for the transition, is I do think that finding your rain as an example, is about a great interview process. Then I think it's about a great training process. Then I think it's about a great daily working environment between the two of you, and a proper level of expectation and great communication and relationship building and all of that. So I just think that a lot of people, this takes real work. It takes real work to develop real talent, and to let develop real talent in the way that it can show, like Rain showed it. But I think people want to do part of it. They may be great at the interview and they suck at the training part, or they're no good at the interview part and they don't find the right talent, but they know that they're great at training, but they didn't hire the right person in the first place. Or they're great at interviewing and they're great at training, but quite frankly, after that, they kind of go off the rails and they become an absent leader. So I think that all of those things are important. And that's where I kind of wanted to go with you is, what is your experience and what advice would you have in any of those areas? Because I see them all as crucial to making this work and to finding a rein, as people would ask me.
Yeah, if you're going to if you want a rein and you want anybody for talent for your organization, you have to become a master at recruiting. You can't just expect to do what everybody else has done all their time and become a master at recruiting. Most people, when they, how often are people hiring for a role? Maybe once a year, if that. Yep. So they go online, they stick a job post up, they get people in, they look at interviews, or they look at their resume, they kind of decide if they want to talk to the person. They don't have a system, they don't have a process, they don't know how to screen real talent up front. Taking time to screen real talent up front is difficult. Yep. It's very time consuming. Doing the math on it, I've seen that to get somebody in your organization that's real talent, virtual or not, takes about 40 to 80 hours of your time. And you have to hope that that offer that you give that person or whatever you're offering them is going to entice them to stay. I had previously, I've gone through an interview process for a job years and years ago, and the whole interview process lasted 5 weeks. 5 weeks of meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. And they put a lot of time, a lot of effort for multiple people. It was, an interview with one person, then another person, then the whole team, all of that. And I turned down the job offer. So at the end of the day, that's a lot of work to do with somebody to lose them. Or even worse, what if I had come on board and then left after, a week or two or a month of training with this person, this team? How much is that going to cost you? How much is that going to set you back? And these people knew how to recruit. They were super good at recruiting, and still it didn't work out for them. So it was 40 to 80 hours of their time out the window. They don't have anything to show for it. And that's what happens. So when you are looking to hire talent, know that you have to become a master of recruiting before you can even start recruiting. Just like developing people. How many times are people reading development books and trying to become a better manager? If you want to lead people, you have to learn how to lead people. If you want to have a rein and have to be able to keep a rein, you have to learn how to keep a rein. Right now, I'm seeing a big trend, and it's unfortunate that people are leaving their organization. And it's because, we're in an economy right now where there are jobs available, where people are paying higher salaries, and they don't have that loyalty with a person, because people don't leave companies, they leave people. Yep. They don't have that relationship with that person enough to stay, saying, if I can make this or a little bit more, would I stay? And the answer you should have with all of your people is, yeah, they should stay. You always want them to stay. So if you're going to develop a person, focus on one of those areas. For me, I've always focused on recruiting. I know recruiting because it's a passion of mine. I love talking to people. I am a 99 on the disc on the I. I'm a high ID. So talking to people every day is what I'm about. So I've recruited hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people over the past 12 years of multiple industries that I've been in. And I've once never been in a recruiting industry. It's just that I've worked for jobs that require you to recruit constantly. So I'm always talking to people, and every time I talk to somebody, I'm always finding out more about them to discover, are they talent? And where in my organization can that person fit someday? Because it may not be here, it may not be right now, but someday I want this person in my organization. So that's where if you know that you're not an expert, and let's say there's multiple aspects there, but if you're not an expert in recruiting, then leverage that piece off to somebody. Yep. Because odds are you're going to spin your wheels. Learn about the process. Learn how to become a better recruiter, and leverage that process off. I've been in real estate. Sorry, David. I've been in real estate. So I've been in real estate personally for 6 years now. I've been in the real estate industry all my life. My dad's a builder. My mom's a realtor. I've been around it all my life. And if you ask me today, hey, when you come ready to sell your house, are you going to go for sale by owner? 100% no. I know the process. I know how to put it on the MLS.
Yep.
I know how to go through that whole thing. Am I smart enough to go and do that? Am I the expert realtor? Not a chance.
And I'm not saying that people need to outsource everything and everything else like that, but I do love the whole idea of just being honest with yourself. There is something about being self-aware and being, just honest with yourself and self-aware that, you know what, maybe it is the recruiting and the hiring I'm not the strongest in. Well, then maybe that's an area that for you to get strong in, because I believe with all my heart that's a learnable skill. But you have to look at your time frame. You have to look at your available time. You have to look at your priorities right now. Is that important to you? Because if you need to hire right now, you don't have time for that. You can build that over the next couple of years, and maybe a couple of years down the road, that is a strength of yours. But if that's an area that you're not strong right now, we talk about leverage all the time in real estate, okay? The admin is leverage for the agents. I mean, we kind of talk about all this stuff. TCs are leverage for the agents, so on and so forth. The fact is if you, as a business owner, you just got to be honest with yourself is don't try to do everything yourself. If there's someone who's better at the recruiting, leverage that out. Now, if you're great at recruiting, you may be a rock star recruiter, you're a great interview, everything else. Then you bring them onto the team. You may be lacking in your ability to train these people. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Or lead them.
That's where you're at. That's where your actual investment is you try to find the best ways to invest in your company to get someone else who's better than you, because you may just fail and lose real talent because you're no good at training them. Then you may be great at training, you may be great at hiring, but how are you as a day-to-day leader? Is there someone else in your organization that's going to do that better? They have better contact and better relationships with your staff than you do. And quite frankly, you just rub them the wrong way. You got to figure out where your leverage is, and it's okay to be honest and use someone else's leverage, talent, and skills. That's what they're there for. It's absolutely what they're there for. And I don't, you and I have kind of mentioned, this isn't meant to be a commercial for my coaching, consulting, and training. It's not meant to be a commercial for your business either. We just wanted to have a real conversation. But let me just ask you, because you know where you're strong, what are the areas that you feel that when someone comes to you, you know that you can hit it out of the park because they're weak in those specific areas? Is it both the recruiting and you're guiding them on the interview and the parts after? Or where are you seeing that your clients, quite frankly, need your leverage more than anything else?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is I realize that a lot of people want to save a couple bucks by hiring direct. They don't take into account their time, everything else. Say they're the best recruiter out there and they can do it on their own. That's great. They go out there, they start bringing in a ton of people. They don't know if these people are really who they say they are. Mm-hmm. They don't know are these people working for other people. They don't know if they're paying the person a competitive wage. And if they're only hiring one person, they can't provide them benefits. They can't do anything else. So if something happens and that person doesn't stay with their organization, they're left up a creek and they have to start the process all over again. Yeah. We come in, we're able to find real talent based on somebody's needs. We get our clients' needs up front and we really take time to understand their business to see how that role is going to impact their business. And we find the person that's going to fit that role. If something happens, we've got a support team to help back them up and say, hey, here's what's happening. The biggest issue, and I think you understand this as well, the biggest issue with any hiring a VA is communication. There's just communication gaps. There are still things I'm learning to this day as regarding communication and how they communicate versus how we communicate. It's funny that a lot of times people will hire somebody and then they expect them to communicate with them, but they never go the opposite direction and they never communicate back.
Yeah.
And I've worked remote jobs before. If I don't hear from my boss for a couple of days, I'm wondering, are they thinking about firing me? Are they thinking I'm providing any value? Am I making an impact? What is going on? I haven't heard from anybody.
Yep.
While they all of a sudden, they only want communication from me. Well, I want the same communication. So we really help bridge those gaps and help people understand, here's how to work with somebody virtually. Because right now, even in the US, jobs are starting to go remote. People are starting to work from home more often, especially in our world. TCs, they work from home more often than not.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
our role here is to help bridge that communication and have that support for those people. So when they need the help, we're here. And it's a team of US based and Filipino based support people. It's people that know both sides of every organization to be able to help with that.
So I want to give a shout out to something that you just said right at the end there, that communication, because that's one area that, and I love that you said it earlier, that Rain knows my wife, she knows my dog, she knows me, everything else like that. And we have a total love, mutual respect for each other. Well, that came from almost nonstop communication. That doesn't come by accident. That came from communication. And so I'm just going to give one example, and this is not to call anybody out. I'm not going to use any names or anything, but this is a real life scenario. Is I'm working in an office. I still testify that we found some real talent. We found another Rain. And if that person was put in the right situation, that person would still be there. The fact is the person that they were reporting to never communicated with them. Touch base a couple times a day just when there were problems. That was pretty much the extent of the communication. And where Rain and I, we spent 8 hours on Skype video per day as if she was sitting in the desk next to me. So she literally would watch my screen shares and watch me all day. And I didn't think of that as overwhelming to anybody. That I treated it as though she was literally sitting in the desk next to me. That's how much communication we had versus touching base to tell you that you did something wrong 3 times a day. And we talked for 2 minutes about each one of those. And what ended up happening is this is the conversation I got back. And it was our employee said, you know what? This just isn't working for me. I just want to hire a real person.
Oh, killer.
Okay. That phrase, and I said, real person, they said, you know what I mean. And you know what? I do know what they meant. They meant they would feel more comfortable if they could hire someone locally that was sitting right next to them. But the fact that even comes out of someone's mouth gives you a mindset of how they were looking at that hire. And that right there, that's a recipe for failure.
100%. I will say this, you and your 8 hours a day is more than I've ever done. It's absolutely, honestly, more than I've ever done. And I developed my relationships by literally with one of my first VAs ever. I had to call, and I would call her every night on my drive home. It was about 6 p.m. She was working, and I was able to call her, and we chat culture. We literally did not talk about anything else except for our culture. What's life like over here? What's life like over there? What does your family do? Where do you come from? Literally everything about each other.
Yep.
We got into some very awesome personal conversations. And I was fascinated to hear what culture's like, what her life was like, what she does for fun. You know, I knew about her house. She showed me pictures of her house and where she lived and what's typical. And I showed her pictures of mine. And we had that relationship to be able just to chat as, you know, as if we're longtime friends, just catching up. And it made such a big difference that, oh my goodness, if I ever heard somebody say, I want a real person, I would be so sad to hear that.
It crushes my soul, you know, and I love that because you have worked with, I've worked with a number of VAs and that's all good and fine, but just being in the line of work that you're in, I'm assuming you've worked with quite a few more. I think I've probably been working with them for more years, but you're in such a consolidated industry, you're still going to work with way more than I am. And the fact that you say that you haven't seen anyone do that 8 hours a day, and here's the way I looked at it, and I mean this, is I just cannot, I'm not capable of thinking of that person as being any different than the person that I hired down the street that's going to come and sit in the desk next to me. So what's the skin off my back if I just have a screen open and she's there? If I give her, you know, hey, let's have you try this project. Let's have you try this. We just trained you on this. She can be working over here doing it. And if she's got a question, she can just turn and say, what did you mean by this and that? Or she can go ahead and show her screen and show me exactly what she's having a challenge with. She's right there as if it's someone sitting next to me on the desk. There's no extra cost to me to have her on the screen 8 hours a day. There's no extra drag on my system. Most of our systems in the offices, give me a break. If you can't have video up all day long, your system sucks.
I will say, David, I will say this. I want to make a clear distinction in what you said. you had her up on a screen on a video so that you two could chat as if she were sitting right next to you. I have heard of a time where it was actually a VA came to me to say, my client has a video of me or of their screen on a TV in their office all day so they can monitor what she's doing. Not so they can chat and talk and be there like she's in the office, but literally it wasn't a two-way audio where they're chatting like you and I are right now. It was monitoring their screen. And if you're starting off a relationship with zero trust in it, it's not gonna last. And it didn't. You know, the VA said, I've never worked with somebody that feels like a micromanager. I've never worked with like under this type of thing where literally all they're doing is they watch what I'm doing. And when I make a mistake, I'm not even getting a chance to correct myself or go learn and fail on my own. They reach out to me and say, what are you doing? And you're doing it wrong, and stop what you're doing. They're not letting, and this is my words, they're not letting me fail fast enough.
Okay, so let me bring up one other point, since that's kind of a new concept for maybe some people, just the thought process of having them up as if they're in the office. Here was the other benefit. Remember how we talked about we want them to be a part of the organization, we want them to be part of culture? Do you think people aren't walking in and out of my office all day long? Of course they are. And you know what they all say? Hey, Rain. Hi, Rain. How you doing, Rain?
I love it. I've never had a company meeting that wasn't over webcam with every VA on it. Yeah. In office, out of office. If you are working remotely, and I worked with, you know, in a real estate team that had teams across the US, and every single time when we had company meetings, pop up your webcams, we're all meeting together and we're all seeing it. And there's none of this, oh, I'm going to mute my video so I can work in the background. It's no, let's have a meeting. Let's talk. You're part of the team. I want your contribution too. One of the greatest things I've heard, David, was one of our clients had reached out to us, and the VA had told us this, but the client let us know as well. They said, I think I made their day. And I said, well, I already know you did because they've already told us, but tell me what you did. They said, well, we have our team meeting every morning. And so we did what you said, and we always have them on webcam. And so this morning I asked them to lead it. And they said, you want me to lead your team meeting? They said, you've been watching us for enough, we've been in part of this for enough now. Go ahead and lead it. And they said that the VA loved it, that they had never worked for the client that made them feel like they were actually a team member. Yeah. And, having them lead that was the highlight of their day. And realize that's not a, hey, here's a bonus, here's a money, here's a pat on the back. It's a small gesture to say, hey, you're part of our team, come be part of our team. Do what our team does.
Well, and the only other thing I'll say about, because I love that, because in our way of doing that to make her feel proud and ownership of everything was, we'd have to constantly develop these different tools and different things like that. And we knew we were developing a tool that she'd end up using. So we would basically send that to her and say, tear it apart, tell us what we need to change. So anything that was implemented, she now has ownership in it. So there's a sense of pride there. The only other thing that I'd mention about the video is that was the first number of weeks. And what ended up becoming is then you start breaking off a little bit and go, how do you feel? Do you want to try to work, the next hour, 2 hours on your own? And it's kind of like, that was another thing when they're early on, they're like, wait, you trust me now to work on yeah, absolutely. And come back whenever you want, or ask me any question anytime you want, or stay away as long as you want. I don't care. Whatever you want to do. You have total freedom. We totally trust you. And the fact that she felt that she was totally trusted, at first, I think she thought that was an overpromise and will underdeliver on that because it didn't seem realistic. And she started realizing how much we trusted her. She ended up with, she could have destroyed me. She's got all of my logins for all, it's my personal accounts, my business accounts, everything. And she earned that trust. So sometimes I hear that too, that question. Well, what about the trust issue with them? I got the same trust issues with someone coming down the street and working in my office. How do you know?
You wouldn't hand your credit card over to a brand new person that you just met. I mean, you have to have a relationship with them. You have to trust them. Yeah. Exact same issue. No different than the person working down the street. Literally, I never think of somebody working halfway across the world. They're literally down the street or next door to me.
Well, and I was doing kind of like you in real estate, where the teams that I was serving, I was in Minnesota. Some of my teams were in Minnesota, some were in New York, some were in Louisiana, some were in Pennsylvania, and she's out in Philippines. The distance of a Skype video call, a text, or anything else is the same distance to me as someone that's 5 minutes down the road to New York, to the Philippines. I mean, it's all fairly instant these days. And I always joke around about, she could be in the Philippines, but she's actually easier for me to work with than Randy, who's on the opposite wall of me, our listings manager, because I had to get up out of my chair, walk 10 feet to the door, walk 10 feet down the hall, 10 feet back into him. And her, if we weren't on video, all I had to do was push a button and there she is. I mean, it was easier to work with her than it was with someone that literally is probably legitimately 3 feet away from my face, but there's a wall between us.
David, I've heard in the past, I heard the objection from some agents saying, well, I can't work with them because they're a virtual assistant, they're far away. And these are people that are on the road and you know, maybe they work with a team, or maybe they're out, you know, on the road with clients all day. Well, their admin team, who's in the office or in a different office than they are, is the exact same thing. They're virtual. Yeah. They are not there with that person. We had that, you know, we've had this discussion before saying, well, I really need somebody in house. It's like, if you know how to email, if you know how to text, if you know how to hop on a webcam, you really don't. They're no different. I literally, my communication way is through GChat and texting. Yep. And so that's what we do, is we text, because I'm not in the office all day. When I go on a meeting, I can't hop on a webcam meeting all the time. So easily just able to text. I bought a Google Voice number. You know, they're free. You can get them set up, and after that, it's just texting back and forth now, like you would a friend.
So let me just ask, because you know, I don't want to take up a ton more of your time. Is there anything else? Because I think you and I literally could talk about this for 3 hours. Is there anything else that either I didn't bring up, we haven't brought up, that you kind of wanted to you want to bring up? I mean, you've heard Rain this last week. You heard me give the webinar today. Is there anything that either wasn't covered or even was covered that you want to emphasize?
I mean, goodness, your webinar today was phenomenal. You know, you talked about so many things that I took notes on. I loved it. Thank you for that. I took notes on your webinar with Rain, by the way, as well. So don't ever think that you never stop learning. There's always somebody that knows something that they can gather from you. I want to touch on the one thing I really liked from your interview process, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So you have a pretty comprehensive interview process, and we've spoken about our differences in the interview process. I think one of the things we agree on is having them take a personality assessment, and the one we agreed that they should take is the DISC. And the one thing I really liked from your interview process, and I believe it's a process you could do with any person in-house or virtual, was you gave them the list of the questions up front. We don't do that. We don't give our questions up front. I've never said they're a secret, because they're not. We literally have our guide posts all online for, if you ever want to interview a VA, here are some good questions versus here are some bad questions to ask. But what you said is, we may not get through all of them, so choose the 2 on your list to make sure that we want to talk about, and let them start with those 2.
Yeah.
And it shows the preparedness. It shows that they have a desire for that job. That to me is so great, because it's, even if I was walking into a job for an interview today, if somebody had given me a list of interview questions and I'm like, oh, I'm going to nail this one, and it was like the last question on there, and they said, hey, can we start, we start with that one, I would be like, I'm putting my best foot forward. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And I'd feel like I'm starting off on a higher playing ground. So I really like that. You and I get the same questions probably daily. Where do you find VAs? One of my favorite, or probably least favorite, is what can they do?
Yeah. What task do you have them do?
You're hiring a person. What do you want them to do? what role are you trying to fill? Yep. You get, how do you interview them? You've already talked about how do you train them? So one of the things I get a lot is people just asking, saying like, what's the biggest challenge you've ever faced? Or what's something that the biggest challenge you ever see a client facing when working with a VA? So that's my question to you.
Well, we're just getting, I mean, you and I just keep getting to know each other better and better. But if you were to take a guess on how I would answer that, it would probably go in one or two directions, in my opinion. What you know about me so far is, number one, you think I'm either going to come up with a legitimate answer and have a half-hour answer, or I'm going to tell you that I probably don't have one, because my default is, and this isn't my natural default, this is what I've worked towards, is that I'm not looking at challenges, I'm always looking at solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that's come up, I'm looking at it as an opportunity that we can come up with a solution, and we can actually move forward and we can improve through this. So I guess my head, if I'm being truly, truly, truly honest, I wouldn't even know how to answer that, because I don't think of it. And I know that doesn't seem either realistic or honest, but that is literally how I don't think that way, because if a challenge comes up, I actually do see that as an opportunity. And that is, I've trained myself to think that way. That's not a default from nature. That's a default from me putting the work in to become that.
Now, David, if you don't mind, I think I know why you are that way. And we haven't talked about this. This isn't a rehearsed interview by any means. I think it's because you feel so comfortable in your relationship with a person that if there is ever an issue or something that you need to talk about, you feel like you can chat with that person and talk to that person. I feel like am I right or am I wrong there?
I think you've got something there, and I think I might phrase it in this way: is I believe everything that I do needs to bring real value. And I think that everybody I'm in front of, they deserve my best. They absolutely deserve my best, and I'm going to give them everything that I've got. And everything that I've got isn't, I need to look at how we can move forward and how we can grow from this. That is what's best. So why wouldn't I just default to that? And I work very hard at that, because I think they deserve that. My wife deserves that. My kids deserve that. And I don't see any difference between who I am as a person when I'm at home as when I'm at work. I don't have the energy to say, okay, I'm at work now, I need to switch this switch. That's tiring, to constantly be different people for different people or different situations. I need to be consistent. Number one, that allows a consistency that I think has value to it, but at the same time, it's less tiring if I can just be the same person all the time. So I'm always looking for that, whether it's in my marriage, whether it's with my kids, or whether it's with Rain. And Rain has made me cry, I would say, in the last 2.5 years, at least 2 or 3 times with this one thing. She has said, David, what means a lot to me is when I really screw up, I'm never afraid to come to you. She said, you are not going to tear into me. You could be disappointed, and I'm still going to walk out of there knowing that I could have come to you, and we're going to figure out a way to work through this. And I would say that if that answers that question, that gives you a little bit of how I approach those situations. So when you ask what's the toughest opportunity working with VAs, give me a freaking break. It's working with humans.
Yeah.
It's not about working with VAs. It's just about working with people.
It's authentic relationships.
Yep.
Being authentic and having those real relationships. I love it. Thank you for being so open and honest with that.
Yeah, that's not a question. You almost got me crying there. That's not a dialogue that I thought we were going to get into, but that's important. I really think that's important. And these are just people, and these are relationships we're working with. And they either are real talent that you're hiring, and they're real good fits for your organization, and you are really good people to them, just like you'd be to anybody else. And so I really appreciate you. I've been really appreciating the fact that we've been getting to spend more time together and get to know each other a bit. I'm proud to be able to kind of share you with people, because I love what you're doing. I love that you're working with these VAs, and I think that not everybody understands it, and not everybody is, quite frankly, either skilled at or has the time, and they need leverage with someone who does what you do, which is to help people find leverage, and you provide a great alternative for people. So thank you. I really do appreciate it.
They appreciate all you do for me. You know, you continually, through everything you've ever done and every time I've ever seen you, only have provided value. So thank you from myself and my whole team, because every time we find you online, we see a new video and we watch it and we talk about it. And so thank you for providing value to us always.
Absolutely, brother. I am going to go ahead, and if you want to stick around for just a minute after this, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. But once again, mutual respect, brother, mutual respect. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm going to stop the video. And everybody, I will put his contact information on the screen, and wherever I post this, we'll make sure that you know who this young man is and how to get a hold of him, his company, and his services. And if you've got any questions before you reach out to him, don't be afraid to call me for a reference. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have or get the answers for you. So you guys have a great day. Thank you. Thank you.